All right, Dan, thank you. And as we've said, the Celina tornado was a deadly one.
A twister killed an 81-year-old man. Investigators tell 13 ABC he was killed when a parked car was blown onto his home.
Our Melissa Veitch has been in Celina all day long covering the extent of the damage there, and she's live with the very latest. Melissa.
Lee and Diane, take a look behind me. This is EF3 tornado damage. Literally, it has taken out an entire street, but it's interesting because you'll have one home that you see here completely destroyed. The one right next to it is completely fine. But I want to take you also back through here. This is a home, and interestingly, we talked with our homeowner here, and he tells me that he did pay attention very, very closely to the warnings. He and his wife got into the basement. They stayed in the basement, and even when the tornado sirens went off, he stayed in the basement just based on instincts. Take a look. Very good move that he did, because this is all that is left of his house. This is what was left of his living room. This used to be his kitchen. The entire house was blown away. So when you hear tornado warnings, it's so very important for you to listen and listen to your instincts on that. They said as soon as the tornado sirens went off, they could hear something that sounded like a big winter storm. It doesn't always sound like that telltale train in the distance coming or a freight train coming on. Then they heard that sound. They heard the cracks. You can see right behind us, it just snapped trees like twigs. People in this neighborhood, up to 40 houses have been completely destroyed, and then hundreds of houses have suffered from damage here. Again, I want to let you know we are about 1 hour north of Dayton here in this area, about 2 hours south, just shy of 2 hours south of Toledo, Lima, but the destruction is just devastating. To the person, the people that we talked with say that they are so grateful. This is everything that can be replaced. They are grateful that they weren't hurt, that they listened to the warnings. We'll have more continuing coverage coming up at 5:30 and also at 6. Reporting live in Celina, Melissa Veitch, 13 ABC Action News. Back to you.
In Celina, just starting to pick up the pieces after a twister roared through that city. Several homes destroyed, in one case, killing a man. Our Melissa Veitch witnessing the damage firsthand, standing by live now from Celina. Mel?
Leah, take a look behind me. When we talk about an EF3 tornado, this winds of 150 miles an hour, it literally cut this home in half. Next door, what was left of that home right now sitting in the front yard. Same thing with the house next door. But take a look across the street. This is the erratic nature of tornadoes in the past that they cut. There's some wind damage, but next door to that, ripped the roof off, and then just down the way, completely obliterated that house. You know, when it comes to tornado damage and the warnings that come out, everybody, to a person that we talked to, says they did heed the warnings. They got into their basement. They got out of the path of harm. Literally, the people that you see here, these homes, they would have been killed had they been upstairs. But they tell me they were in the basement. They kind of, you know, the tornado sirens, they tell me, went off. They waited just a heartbeat, and then they started to hear the sounds that you mentioned, loud banging, cracking in the houses. Freight train, for a couple of people said they described it that way, but it's just something you've got to, again, take a look at this house. This house was cut in half. The woman in this house does not have a basement. We are told she got into the bathtub in the middle of the house and covered herself, and that saved her life. There are people, we talked about 7 people that were hurt. We are hearing that 3 of them were hurt seriously. We did lose a life down here. An 81-year-old man, we are told, was killed when a car in front of his house blew into his house and killed him. We've got at least 40 homes that are completely destroyed, and then hundreds of homes that have damage as a result of the tornadoes that ripped through here about 10 o'clock last night. Again, we're about 80 miles north of Dayton, an hour away from Dayton, just under 2 hours away from Toledo. We'll continue to follow this. We'll have more tonight on 13 ABC Action News at 6 o'clock. Back to you in the studio.
Celina still picking up the pieces here after a wicked twister roared through their community. 13 ABC's Melissa Veitch back out there today to see how residents are coping.
Day 2 after the tornadoes down here in Celina, and the cleanup, as you can hear, continues. You've got backhoes, you've got electric saws. This house in particular went down in 20 seconds. Elmer Stockler and his wife Sue had just celebrated their 40th anniversary. When the storm hit that night, they fled to the basement. He says it took all of 30 seconds.
I looked at my wife, I said, honey, we just lost everything.
They came up to face the damage.
We walked out of the basement, and you can see lightning.
His neighbor Lori Robbins and her son heard the train sound and made a run for it.
We barely made off the last step and stuff was hitting the windows. We got in the small room and got down on our hands and knees.
A sound she says was deafening.
I thought the house was going to come down on us. It was so loud.
Her yard is now filled with neighbors and friends helping to clean up.
You see this kind of stuff on TV and you think, oh, how sad for those poor people. And we are the poor people now.
Shauna Stump's mother miraculously survived, she says.
If you look inside there, there's debris all over the house except for the one spot where she was laying. There's a circle around her where she was laying. There is no debris.
Shauna's mother's house is in a line where the tornado touched down and ripped out more than 10 houses. Ruth Hanna's uncle, Dale Hanna, lived 3 doors down. Dale Hanna was the first person to lose his life in the tornado when a car blew through his bedroom and landed right on top of him when he was asleep. Ruth says the loss has hit her family hard.
You remember the good times, but it was so sad and tragic.
In Celina, Melissa Veitch, 13 ABC Action News.